that I chose to talk about today has to do with repetition, because it kind of reaches into a lot about the way that we communicate with and support people who are living with dementia, and dare I say, people who are not living with dementia, right? There are plenty of people who repeat themselves all the time, and their brains are working just fine. So how do we support people and be with people in those situations? So, hey, thanks for coming off camera, Christine. I appreciate that. So, or coming on camera. So, of course, this is a pretty early symptom, right, of somebody starting to tell stories. It's less in the beginning about asking the same questions over and over, and more about telling stories that they've already told. And um, one of the things that we deal with is the like, do we tell them? Like, do I tell someone that you are repeating yourself a lot? And I know that I have said to the people in my life, hey, if I start telling the same stories over and over again and I don't seem aware of it, please let me know, because I don't want to do that to people. Um, I think I'm mostly aware when I repeat a story, and often I will say, hey, I know I've already told you this story, but you're going to suffer through it again because I really like it. So, and it feels appropriate at this time. Um, so how do you tell someone? Well, I'm a big fan of asking someone. So I repeat myself sometimes, and I know that you do that too. And so I'm just curious, like, how do you want me to handle that? Because what I want is for you to tell me. Do you want me to share with you if you're repeating a story and I don't think that you're aware of it? It's always good to have those kinds of conversations if a person is open to it. There was a couple that was in my support group, and they had a code that when the one who had a dementia diagnosis, they'd be at a social event or a dinner or whatever, when she started telling a story that she'd already told, her partner would go like this. And that meant that you've told that story once before. And then she would go like this if it was that you've told that story two times before. And when she got to three times, they would typically leave whatever the event was, because the person who was living with dementia started feeling kind of bad about the fact that they were repeating a lot. But it's because they were still able to have that conversation. Later on, as her dementia progressed, she didn't take as kindly to being reminded that she was repeating stories. And so, what I want to do is just kind of open this up to a conversation for a moment. And I want us all to just think about this. You're hanging out with a group of people and you have the funniest story. This great thing that you used to do, your family happened in your family when you were a little kid, and you just thought you love this story. And so you start telling this story, and somebody stops you and they say, you've already told us that story four times. So I want you to just pause for a moment and just think about, like, what is the emotional response? What's the emotion that you feel when somebody tells you, they stop you and they tell you that you've already told that story? Does anybody have any thoughts there?
You feel disregarded and unacknowledged. And a lot of times what I see with the residents that I've managed and even my family with dementia is you feel less than, that you're not important at that point.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else that anybody would share?
I'd feel dumb that I couldn't remember.
Yeah. It's a little shaming, isn't it? Because you sort of, to Julie's point, you feel like you're less than, because not everybody seems to be doing that. I seem to be the only one who's doing that. And I'm a little bit ashamed. Um, if the person who is living with dementia is not aware of the fact that they have dementia, or if they don't like to talk about the fact that they have dementia, um, we need to think about how we respond. I mean, in any of those situations, we need to think about how we respond. But the first place to start is always with, how does this, what are they feeling right now that they're telling me this story? What are my options? And what will happen if I ask them to stop? We need to think about the fact that uh, so I'm just reading my notes for just a second. Sorry about that. That they, oh, right. So we talked about shame, fear, right? If I tell them, you know what, that's the fourth time you've told that story. If they don't know in that moment that there's anything wrong with their brain, it causes them to think about the fact that, why am I repeating this story? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, I have no memory of having repeated that story. And you just said that I've said it four times. Oh my gosh, that can cause fear. It can also cause mistrust, because you know what? my brain's working fine. And if I had told that story 4 times, I would know that I've told this story 4 times. So you're gaslighting me. Why are you lying to me? So it can cause mistrust between the person who's living with dementia and the person who is supporting them when we respond in that way. So what are our options? And I'll just open that up to the crowd. So what could we do if somebody is telling us a story that they have already told us a number of times? Any thoughts? Go
Act
ahead,
like
Julie.
it's new every
Oh,
time.
say that, Jane.
Acts like it's new every time. Because it
Yeah.
is to them.
Oh my gosh. Jane, you've nailed it, right? Like stay in their reality. Their reality, none of us knowingly tell the same story over and over again, unless it's like I pointed out in the beginning, like I know I've told this before, but right now we're crossing a bridge and I'm going to tell you that bridge story because it fits in the moment, right? But none of us want to absolutely just sort of be telling stories over and over again. And so it causes all of those bad emotions. So acting like it's the first time, because as you said, that's my reality, that it is the first time. Julie, is there something that you would add to that?
That's exactly what I teach my team members here, because I do a lot of education, and I was a corporate director of memory care for a long time in my
Ah,
career
great.
too. Is you act like the story is new, because a lot of times what I find is, even if it's almost the exact same story, oftentimes with my residents, they add new details every time they teach it. They tell a story, and even repetitive questions. Sometimes they will add new stuff in there, and you can really listen. And if you just acknowledge them, it fills the need, because it's not always the answer they're seeking for. They have a need that needs to be filled, and it's attention.
That's exactly right. And we can ask them, like we can dig deeper, can't we? We can say, oh my gosh, I love that story. I mean, we could add something like, I love that story every time you tell it. Or we could just say, I love that story. But you know what I'm wondering is that when you talk about, you said that you were all sitting in the grass, was it cold outside? So we can start just digging for details that might be able to take the story in a different direction and actually make it a little bit more interesting for us and maybe help us learn a few things about the person that we're supporting. Yeah, I know that my grandmother used to tell a story over and over again, and I actually think that she was cognitively fine. I think the issue is that she was lonely and that she didn't have a lot going on. Ooh, look at that. And she didn't have a lot going on in her life. And so she would tell the same stories because, frankly, they were the only stories that she had. And I think that if I had asked for more details, I would have learned a lot. Instead, my way of dealing with it is at 18, 19 years old, that I would say, I'm so sick of that story. You keep telling that story over and over again. And she would also tell a story sometimes that was rather upsetting. It was about a family tragedy, and I certainly don't need to go into details on that. But I think that if somebody is telling a story that's upsetting, and they tell the same story over and over again, that sometimes we need for our own sanity and for theirs, right? Because if it upsets them to tell this story, it's helpful to try to push things into a slightly different direction, even if it's to say, oh my gosh, this story is really hard for me to hear, but I love the story that you tell about the time that you found that apple tree growing like in the middle of nowhere. Can we talk about that story? And oftentimes people will be game to shift gears as long as they still get to have their needs met, which is to be heard and to have connection and conversation. And if we reach a point where we can't do this, where the stories are repetitive and it's making us really, really feel uptight, and we feel our own stomachs kind of like cringing every time that they start to tell the story, that's an indication that we need to do something different. It's an indication that we need some support. Whether it's that we don't have a support group, then we need to find one, or that we need a trusted friend who we can call in those moments. Do we need to learn how to meditate? Do we need to take breaths? Do we need to say, you know what? This story is such a good story. However, I've got to go for a walk right now, or I've got to take a phone call. We need to be able to break that cycle if we find ourselves getting really troubled and triggered by the things that are being repeated. And Julie, you had mentioned that sometimes your residents, not just stories, but they also ask the same questions repeatedly. And just nod your head if that's something that is part of your world. Okay. All right. Would anybody care to share a little bit about that's like in your situation?
What's for dinner?
What's for dinner? Yeah.
What? No, what's for dinner?
Yeah.
What?
So why do you think she's asking what's for dinner?
Because she cares. She knows she's going to be making dinner, and she wants to make sure she gets it going, and gets it done right.
Ah. So does your wife still prepare the meals?
She does. We used to own a restaurant, and she is a trained chef. All the meals are offered here, and they're a part of our normal monthly. But she still wants to cook, and that's how I discovered that she was having a problem, was watching her try to cook, and it was so different than what it was in the past. She couldn't carry the thoughts through. Usually she'd be able to just everything together. And
Right.
now it's going to the book and going back to the book and going back to the book and back to the book. So we're cooking a lot together now, which is really great. We help each other. I'm
I
learning from her, and I'm helping her with the challenge that she's having.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really wonderful. That ability to follow a path, to follow a recipe, to follow a series of steps of
Yeah.
any kind, it does just get really hammered by dementia. Just stepping aside for just a second, I talked about this panel that of people who are living with dementia. Something that I found interesting is that one of the ladies, she said, you get up in the morning and you throw your feet over the side of the bed, maybe you slip on your slippers, you go to the toilet, you run in, maybe you brush your teeth, you run downstairs, and you've got like stuff going on about like, okay, I need to make this phone call. She said, and it's automatic, like you operate like an automaton. You don't need to think about the fact that like, okay, I need to sit up, my slippers are under the bed, I'm gonna put them on. You just do it. It's just natural. And she said, for me as a person living with dementia, every single thing that I do takes an enormous amount of thought, and it is absolutely exhausting. One of the things that all of these people said is that by the middle of the day, they need a nap. They're wiped out because their brain is so tired from just trying to think through processes and steps. Stephen, I love the fact that your solution is that you guys make dinner together. If she asks the question repeatedly, how do you manage just the asking of the question?
I I answer it every time,
Okay.
but I've also remind her that if she goes looks at the whiteboard, that we've got the week's menu we put together on the whiteboard, just so it helps her to remember. But she still asks, and it's still okay. And I just answer.
I love that. It's like Jane said before, I just listened to this story as though it's the first time, right? And the whiteboard is great. There are different kinds of memory aids that people use, of course. A whiteboard, a little notebook, maybe we have a list that's tacked onto the refrigerator, whatever it is, something, a visual cue, right? A visual cue that we can send them to. But sometimes we do need to just answer the question. And we also need to think about, is there something else behind the question? So in your case, your wife is the person who's preparing the meal. And so it's on her mind because at some point she's going to have to kick into gear and start making that meal. And so she wants to make sure, as you said, that right, that she has it together, that she's got all the bits and pieces.
Yeah, there have been those nights where she has forgotten, and I might not be here or around, and she forgets, and then she feels like crap.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
feels terrible.
Yeah, I bet she does.
Which, yeah,
And I know in for situations where people are not necessarily making the meals any longer, what could be prompting that question is that once in my life, I was the person who prepared the meals. And it's really like I feel like there's something I should be doing right now, and it has something to do with dinner, but I'm not really sure what it is. And so I keep asking these perseverant questions. It could also be that I'm hungry. Maybe I'm actually hungry right now. And so we always want to get curious about what is the emotion or the need that's driving the repetitive question. And if it's problematic, what do we do about it? So I'm thinking about an example like if we have, if my husband knows that we have a dental appointment coming up on Friday and it's Wednesday, and he's asking all the time, when is the dentist appointment? When is the dentist appointment? When is the dentist appointment? Then that's an indication to me that maybe the better time for me to tell him about something like a dental appointment is as we're driving to the dental appointment, where maybe we do something like go get a coffee first because he loves going out for coffee. And then after the coffee, I say, "Ooh, it's time for us to go to the dentist." Some people feel like that's not really nice and that's not really fair because you're kind of springing something on them. But in my opinion, you're saving them days of perseveration. And that's worse, right? Living in fear and living in anxiety is not really something that we want to put upon a person who we care about. I also think about things like if we're going to be having a birthday party, or if it's a holiday, right? Some people have issues with this around the holidays, that we put up we're a family for instance, if a family is a family that always puts up a Christmas tree the second day of December, and then they live through 23 days of their loved ones saying, when are we going to be opening the presents? When are, right? Wow. Maybe we need to shift gears and be a family who puts up a Christmas tree the day before Christmas. Again, just to save the person having that kind of anxiety and fear. Um, yeah, or if we're going on a trip, right? Having the suitcases out in the hall a few days ahead of time, having travel books lying around, again, could be triggers that cause somebody to perseverate. I wonder if anybody has any specific, like Stephen shared a great example of his wife in the evening getting a little concerned about dinner. Anybody else have any repetitive questions, issues, or concerns, or things that you run into that you'd care to share? Yeah, Jane.
I'll share quickly and then I have to run, but I have to say that Zinnia has been a huge blessing. We were in rehab for a month with my mom, and Zinnia was just with me. I promoted
Yeah.
every chance I get. So my mom, are her parents still alive? You know,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
made pictures of all family members. We put birth and death dates on the pictures, on the photos. And I thought for sure that would like really help. Mm, yes and no. But at
Wow.
least we could talk about it. It's out there. We could talk about it. And she would accept it eventually. Well, okay, so my parents said, but every conversation was different. And I had to just answer it. I had to kind of try to guess where she was at in that moment
Yes.
and what it was that she really needed to know why her parents were alive. Was it because she wanted to go home? Was it because she needed to know they were okay? What, each time might have been different, but the question was still the same. Are my parents still alive?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's very interesting that you put the photos up with the birth and the death dates. I've never heard that before. I just read a great book. I know you're going to need to take off, Jane. Thank you for joining us today. I just read a great book where the author talked about that question of like, when is my husband coming to see me? When the husband is actually dead. And she said that the way that they handled it is that they said, tell me the last time you remember seeing your husband. And she said, he was sick. He was sick. My husband was in the hospital. And then after she talked for a while about her husband, she said, my husband died, I think. And so she kind of brought herself to that place, but she brought herself there in a very natural way. And I've never heard that. I'd never read or heard that before. Certainly, I'm a big fan of validation, right? Like, tell me more about your husband. Like, why do you love your husband? But I love the way that you guys have handled it. That's very interesting. And thank you for the nod to Zinnia. I'm glad that it's been helpful for you. Cool. Any other sharing that people have with this topic in particular about like questions and concerns that people have around repetitive questions, repetitive stories? Julie, I'm sure that you have a million of them from your many years of supporting people living with dementia. But Sabrina, Jessica, Chrisney,
I'm
Cindy,
happy to share. I helped my dad. He had early onset Alzheimer's. We are well beyond early at this point. I don't even know why they keep that word in his charts, but his new one, and we're kind of new to repetition, which is why thank you for this, by the way. It's very helpful. But his newest one is we started with the caregiver, somebody that's just coming twice a week just to there's things that need to be done now that I can't do. And anyways, all the time, when is Carol coming? When is Carol? And I have it on the board and I have it on the calendar and I text them and we get on the phone every day, twice a day. When is Carol coming? It's driving me nuts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Carol is, so you don't live with your dad.
No, not yet. I
Yeah.
have a teenager and a husband and all the other things.
Oh yeah, no, no, no. Yeah, yeah. That's wonderful that you have Carol in your life. And does he like Carol?
He likes Carol. He doesn't love the help. I don't think. It's really hard to tell. So, I'll throw that out there. And I actually have my own like mental health person, and she was just asking me the same thing. And I'm like, I really don't know if he likes it or not. It hasn't helped astronomically. A lot of the medical problems he was having that were putting him in urgent care have gone away. So,
Yeah.
but for him, in a personal perspective, I can't tell if he likes it or not. His brain is mixing things up quite a bit. So, hard to tell, but she, personality wise, I think is a good fit for him. I think if the circumstances were different, he would love to have the companion. She comes in, sits down, they chat for a while. He plays his guitar for her, like, all the things. So,
Oh my
any other
gosh.
circumstances, I, as a daughter, would say yes, they're a great fit, but I can't tell what he's thinking.
No, I'm just curious if you've ever asked him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he says, "Oh, well, she works really hard. She's a really hard worker." And he says that like 5 times, but that's as far as conversations kind of end with the derailment, right? I think that's kind of typical. Like it'll go from that to fish. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I totally understand that. Yeah. And so he calls you up on the phone and he wants to know when Carol is
Quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if you were to do something like leave a voicemail on your phone that says, "Hey, Dad, if you're calling about Carol, she'll be there at 5." And when you
For
see him
him to
come,
get,
you just,
yeah, something like that.
I don't know. I don't
I
know if
don't
that
know.
would
It
help.
feels like whatever I do, I sometimes I think he just wants to hear my voice. Because
Probably.
I do live a little bit of a distance, only an hour, and I only get out there once a week, sometimes twice if we have appointments I have to take him to. But I think sometimes he's trying to find something he has to ask me to get my attention.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's sweet that you're, oh, I mean, it sounds like you are like, it's not what I want to be doing, but I'm okay that I'm able to.
Yeah, no, I want to be doing this. I'm
Okay, good.
helping him. It's just,
Okay, good.
it gets
Good.
hard, and that's why I'm here. Like now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of it. So I
Yes.
take all the advice everyone has.
Oh boy, yeah, yeah. There was a company a few years ago who they were developing a product that was an AI agent, really, that would basically like have your voice. And so when Dad would like, so the AI would intercept and would be like, "Hi, Dad, Carol's coming today at 3," or whatever. That didn't go off the ground, but I suspect that there are going to be a lot more things like that
Oh my gosh,
coming
that would be
down the pike.
amazing. I'm all for that.
Like a little robot. "Hi,
I'll be
Dad." Yeah.
Googling that over the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to design this.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else have anything that they can share about this topic, or let's open it up? I mean, if there's anything that